I didn't respond to any of them, just watched as my inbox filled up. The next morning I got a call from Roger the accountant. He sounded stressed and kept his voice low like he was worried about being overheard. He said my parents had received notice of an IRS audit based on credible information from a whistleblower. They were in full panic mode, shredding documents and arguing about who was to blame. Roger admitted he'd tried to warn them for years that their creative accounting would catch up with them eventually. Now he was distancing himself to avoid getting dragged down with them. Smart guy. I finally answered one of Gabriella's calls that afternoon. She was surprisingly calm. Said Dad had already lost 3 more clients who'd heard about the lawsuit. The business was hemorrhaging money. Mom had been uninvited from her charity committee after someone shared screenshots of the megaphone incident. Gabriella wasn't calling to guilt-trip me. Surprisingly, she just wanted to know if I was okay and to warn me that Dad had been driving around looking for me. I thanked her for the heads up and suggested she might want to check her own credit report just in case. That weekend the Hendersons invited me to dinner and mentioned there had been a strange man in a BMW asking around the neighborhood about me. They hadn't told him anything. Thankfully, Mr. Henderson actually patted my shoulder and said I seemed like a good kid who got dealt a bad hand. First time in years anyone from my parents' generation had shown me basic human decency. Week 5 is when things got really wild. My brother Sawyer showed up at my workplace. He looked like crap, unshaven, bags under his eyes, expensive clothes wrinkled like he'd slept in them. He begged me to call off the IRS. Said Dad was facing penalties of over $100,000 plus possible criminal charges for the identity theft with the credit card. I asked him why I should care after what they did to me. His answer was unexpected. Dad had a stress-induced cardiac event, not a full heart attack, but close, and was in the hospital. Mom was blaming me, saying I was killing my own father. For a split second, I actually felt guilty. Then I remembered how they destroyed my belongings, humiliated me publicly, and stolen from me for years. I told Sawyer I'd visit Dad in the hospital, but I wasn't stopping anything that was already in motion. The hospital visit was awkward as hell. Mom tried to physically block me from entering Dad's room, hissing that I'd done enough damage. A nurse had to intervene. Dad looked smaller somehow, hooked up to monitors. When he saw me, he didn't yell or threaten like I expected. Instead, he tried manipulation, said he was sorry if he'd been a bit harsh and that we needed to put family first. I just looked at him and asked if he remembered what he'd said while smashing my laptop on the driveway. Worthless computer for a worthless person. He had the audacity to claim he didn't remember saying that. Classic Dad. Selective memory when it suits him. I left after 5 minutes. Didn't see any point in arguing with someone who would never admit fault. Mom followed me to the parking lot, switching between crying about how I was destroying the family and threatening that I'd regret this when they were completely ruined. What they don't get is that I never wanted to ruin them. I just wanted consequences for their actions. For once in their lives, I wanted them to face the results of their choices instead of manipulating or bullying their way out of trouble. Last week, Gabriella called with an update. Mom and Dad are selling the house. They can't afford it anymore with the business failing and the IRS penalties. They're downsizing to a condo about half the size. Dad's business is basically over. No one wants to work with him after the lawsuit went public in industry circles. The sweet part, Tristan's company offered me a position after they saw how thorough my documentation was. I start next month with better pay than I've ever had. The Henderson son is moving back to town, so I found my own apartment that I can actually afford now. Yesterday, both my parents showed up at my current job. I was helping a customer when they walked in, looking completely different from the confident, polished couple they'd always been. Dad had lost weight. Mom's perfect highlights had grown out. They asked if we could talk privately. For almost an hour, they took turns between apologizing and guilt-tripping. Mom cried about how they might lose everything. Dad said they were just trying to motivate me that day on the lawn. They claimed they'd always had my best interests at heart, even when charging me rent and claiming me as a dependent, which makes zero logical sense. Then they asked if I would consider dropping the IRS whistleblower claim in exchange for them paying me back the rent money. Too little, too late. I told them the investigation was already happening. I couldn't stop it now, even if I wanted to. And frankly, I didn't want to. They'd made their choices for years. The lawn eviction wasn't some one-off bad day. It was the culmination of a lifetime of emotional abuse and exploitation. Mom tried one last manipulation, saying that families should forgive each other. I just looked her in the eyes and asked if she remembered standing on the porch with a megaphone announcing to the whole neighborhood that I was a failure and a freeloader. She didn't have an answer for that. I'm not going to lie and say I feel nothing but satisfaction. There are moments I question if I went too far. But then I remember how they destroyed my belongings, humiliated me publicly, and systematically exploited me financially for years. They weren't just strict parents. They were abusers who got caught. So that's where things stand now. I've got my own place, a better job, and a future that doesn't involve being anyone's punching bag. My parents are facing the consequences of their actions for probably the first time in their lives. Sawyer's actually been texting me about normal brother stuff lately. Gabriella's keeping her distance from all of us while she figures out her own relationship with our parents. The nuclear phone messages I promised them on the lawn that day turned out to be the fallout from their own lies and manipulations finally catching up with them. Sometimes revenge isn't about what you do to someone else. It's about letting them face the natural consequences of their own actions. For everyone who supported me through this, thank you. I never would have had the courage to stand up for myself without your advice and encouragement. For anyone else dealing with toxic family members, document everything. Know your worth and don't let them gaslight you into thinking their abuse is normal. They're not just using this info to compete with Dad. They're actually reaching out to his current clients with evidence of his fraudulent practices. Apparently, several have already backed out of contracts with him and are exploring legal options. Dad's business is taking a serious hit. Last weekend was when things got really intense. My sister Gabriella texted asking to meet for coffee. I was suspicious, but agreed to see her at a Starbucks. She showed up looking stressed and not nearly as put together as usual. Her perfect Instagram life was showing some cracks. Turns out Dad had asked Gabriella and her husband for a loan to cover some temporary business setbacks. When she asked for details, he brushed her off. She started asking questions and heard rumors about clients leaving. So she came to me. I didn't reveal everything, but I made it clear that Dad's business problems weren't temporary and that our parents had been financially exploiting me for years. Showed her the credit card statements. Her reaction surprised me. Instead of defending them, she got quiet, then admitted they'd done similar things to her when she was in college, borrowing from her student loans, using her first credit card without permission. The difference is she married rich and escaped. I became their new target. And Sawyer, he's always been the golden child who could do no wrong, probably because he sends them money regularly to keep them off his back. Gabriella tried to convince me to stop what I'd set in motion, not to protect them, but because she's worried about the fallout affecting her image by association. Her in-laws are super status conscious, and a scandal involving tax fraud and business malpractice would be embarrassing for her. I told her I wasn't stopping anything. They made their choice when they humiliated me in front of the entire neighborhood and destroyed my property. She left upset, but I could tell she wasn't going to warn them. She's protecting herself first. The real breakthrough came yesterday. I've been documenting everything on a private Google Drive, and I decided to create a separate folder with just the evidence about their lies regarding my rent payments and dependent status. I shared it with a few key neighbors who were present during the lawn eviction, including Mrs. Anderson, who had clapped and called me an eyesore. Sent it with a simple message explaining that my parents had been charging me rent while telling everyone I lived there for free, and included the Venmo records. No accusations, just facts. Within hours, my phone was blowing up with texts from other neighbors who had seen the evidence. Apparently, it spread quickly through the neighborhood group chat. Mom called me screaming, said people were messaging her asking if it was true that they'd lied about me not paying rent. Some neighbors had even brought up other instances where my parents had lied about stuff, like claiming they donated to the neighborhood fund when they hadn't, or taking credit for community work they never did. Their carefully crafted image is crumbling, and they're panicking. Then this morning I got an email from Dad's biggest client requesting a meeting. They'd heard from multiple sources about questionable business practices and wanted to talk to me directly before making any decisions about their ongoing projects with Dad's company. The meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. I know this might sound like I'm being vindictive, but after what they did to me, after years of being treated like the family disappointment while they literally stole from me and lied about me, they deserve every bit of this. This isn't just about the lawn eviction. It's about the lifetime of emotional abuse, the constant comparisons to my siblings, the manipulation, the financial exploitation. They created this situation, not me. All I'm doing is telling the truth with evidence to back it up. The best part, my credit score already went up 30 points since the fraudulent card was removed from my report. I've got a lead on an affordable apartment that doesn't require perfect credit, and I've been saving every penny from my 2 jobs. I'm not just surviving without them. I'm building something better. Meanwhile, their carefully constructed facade is falling apart brick by brick. The meeting with Dad's client tomorrow could be the final blow to his business. I'm nervous, but ready. No more being the family punching bag. Final update, once loyal. It's been about 6 weeks since this nightmare started, and holy crap you guys, the phrase karma's a bitch doesn't even begin to cover what's happened. So that meeting with Dad's biggest client, I was nervous as hell walking in. They'd booked a conference room at a Marriott, and when I got there, 3 people in suits were waiting. 2 from the client company and 1 guy they introduced as their attorney. That's when I knew this was serious. I brought my folder of evidence, not to dump everything on them, but to back up anything they questioned. They started by asking why I was doing this. Was it just revenge? I was straight with them. Told them about the lawn eviction, the years of emotional abuse, and how I discovered the financial exploitation. Then I showed them specific examples of where my dad had overcharged them, substituted cheaper materials, and billed for work that was never completed. The lawyer kept taking notes while the other 2 looked increasingly pissed. They asked detailed questions about specific projects, and I could answer most of them because I'd helped with the paperwork on weekends. By the end, they weren't even hiding their anger. They thanked me for coming forward and said they'd be conducting a full audit of all work my dad's company had done for them. 2 days later, my phone exploded, like 20+ messages flooding in every second, just like I'd promised on the lawn that day. The first text was from Sawyer. Dad lost the client contract worth almost $1 million. Apparently, they're also suing him for fraud and breach of contract. The second was from Gabriella. Mom's freaking out because the neighbors are avoiding her, and someone anonymously informed her country club friends about the lawn eviction and how they'd been lying about me. Third was from Dad himself. Where the fuck are you? You've ruined everything. Fourth from Mom. Please call us. We need to talk. This has gone too far. Then more texts from random relatives, family, friends, even Dad's business associates, all wanting my side of the story, since my parents were apparently telling everyone I was mentally unstable and making things up. The drug thing is rich coming from them. Dad's been popping Xanax like candy for years. Mom drinks wine from breakfast to bedtime. But somehow I'm the problem child because I changed my major from business to marketing and design against their wishes. Been working double shifts to build up some cash. My regular gig only had my backup portfolio, so I lost a bunch of my best recent work when Dad smashed my laptop. Luckily, I had most projects backed up to Google Drive, but still lost about 2 months of stuff. Yesterday, something weird happened. I went to file my taxes late, I know, and the tax prep software flagged something about dependency status. Turns out my parents have been claiming me as a dependent for tax purposes the past 2 years despite charging me rent. That's literally tax fraud. So I called their accountant, Roger. He's known me since I was a kid and always seemed decent. I said I needed some tax documents that might still be at my parents' house. He sounded uncomfortable when I explained what happened. After some awkward silence, he admitted my parents have been manipulating their finances in creative ways for years. Said he'd been trying to get them to clean things up, but they wouldn't listen. Roger mentioned that Dad opened a credit card in my name 3 years ago when I moved back home. I had no idea. Checked my credit report right away. Sure enough, there's a card with a $6,000 balance I never knew existed. That explains why my credit score tanked last year when I tried to get my own apartment. The pieces are starting to fit together now. My parents have been financially exploiting me while simultaneously shaming me publicly for being a burden. The $12,000 they claim I owe is probably charges on the fraudulent credit card they opened. And it gets better. Remember how I mentioned Dad's business practices? Well, I ran into my old college friend Tristan yesterday. Complete coincidence. We were both at the same coffee shop. He works for Dad's biggest competitor now. We got to talking, and I mentioned the situation. Tristan said his dad's company has a reputation for cutting corners and overbilling clients. They've been trying to get evidence of it for months to warn potential customers. I have years of overheard conversations, emails I was copied on by mistake, and documents I was asked to file away quietly when I helped at the office on weekends. Stuff that would absolutely tank Dad's reputation in the industry. Moms know better. She's been running this whole perfect family image in their social circle while treating me like garbage behind closed doors. Always comparing me to Sawyer or Gabriella, always finding something to criticize. My room was too messy, even when it was clean. My car was an embarrassment even though it's reliable and paid off. My clothes were sloppy even when I dressed up. Nothing was ever good enough.
It was always about appearances with them.
I've started documenting everything. The fraudulent credit card, the tax fraud, the Venmo payments they claim never happened. I've got screenshots of texts where Mom acknowledged receiving my rent. I've got emails where Dad threatened to kick me out if I didn't contribute more, even while I was already paying rent and helping around the house. Called my cell provider yesterday to make sure they can't somehow access my new number. The customer service rep noticed there were 2 additional lines on my account I was paying for. Turns out they added their personal phones to my plan 3 years ago when my student discount made it cheaper. I've been paying for their cell phones this whole time. I'm not just angry anymore. I'm methodical. I'm calculating. Every day, I uncover more ways they've been using me while pretending I was the burden. I've got a meeting with a credit agency tomorrow about the fraudulent card, already filed disputes on all the charges. Next step is compiling all the evidence of their tax fraud for a potential whistleblower report to the IRS. As for Dad's business, I'm meeting Tristan for lunch next week. He says his boss would be very interested in what I know. They thought they were punishing the family disappointment. They didn't realize they were creating their worst nightmare, someone with nothing left to lose who knows all their secrets. The best part, they have no idea what's coming. They think I'm just off sulking somewhere, broken and humiliated. But I'm building something much more satisfying than they could imagine. Revenge isn't going to be quick. It's going to be thorough. Once loyal, update 2. It's been about 3 weeks since the lawn eviction, and holy crap, things are starting to happen. My hands are literally shaking as I type this. First off, thank you for all the advice about the IRS whistleblower program. I didn't even know that was a thing until someone mentioned it in the comments. Turns out you can report tax fraud and potentially get a percentage of what they recover. I filed the report last week with all the evidence I had. The Venmo receipts of my rent payments, screenshots of text conversations where they acknowledged the arrangement, and proof they were claiming me as a dependent while collecting rent from me. The day after I submitted everything, I got a call from a blocked number. It was my dad. Somehow he found out about the credit card disputes I'd filed. He was livid. Started by acting all fake concerned, asking where I was staying and if I was okay, then switched to threatening me about making false accusations and ruining the family's reputation. I recorded the whole call. My state is one-party consent. When I told him I knew about the card he'd opened in my name, he completely changed tactics, claimed it was just to build my credit and that he was doing me a favor. Right, because maxing out a card I didn't know about and missing payments is super helpful for my credit score. I told him identity theft and fraud are felonies, and he hung up on me. The next day, my mom showed up at my work. No idea how she found out where I was working since I got a new job at a small local place. She caused this whole scene in front of everyone, crying about how worried they've been and how I'm destroying the family with my false accusations. My coworkers were super confused. I took her outside to the parking lot before she could say anything specific. That's when she dropped the act. She hissed at me that I needed to withdraw the credit disputes immediately, or they would press charges against me for stealing from them over the years. When I asked what I supposedly stole, she said, "Food, electricity, water. You think that's all free?" I laughed in her face, told her I had receipts for every penny I'd paid them, and reminded her about the megaphone show they put on for the neighborhood. She slapped me across the face hard. I didn't hit back, just stepped away and told her to leave before I called the police. She left, but not before shouting that I'd regret this. Meanwhile, the meeting with Tristan and his boss went even better than expected. I brought all the documentation I had about Dad's business practices, the emails where he discussed overbilling clients, the internal records showing they used cheaper materials than what they charged for, even a handbook he gave me when I helped in the office that literally had a section about how to upsell unnecessary services. Tristan's boss was shocked at how blatant it all was. Yesterday started like any other Thursday. I was tired after my shift, looking forward to just grabbing some leftovers and crashing. I pulled my 2014 Toyota Corolla into our neighborhood. Well, my parents' neighborhood now, I guess. Around 6:30 p.m., as I turned onto our street, I noticed there was some kind of commotion ahead. People were standing on their lawns, looking at something. It wasn't until I got closer that I realized they were all staring at our house. And all my stuff was scattered across the front yard. I'm not talking about just a few boxes. Everything I owned was thrown everywhere. My clothes were hanging from tree branches. My books were scattered across the driveway, getting soaked from the sprinklers. My gaming setup was in pieces on the sidewalk. Even my childhood stuff that I'd kept in storage boxes was dumped out. And there was my mom on the porch with a megaphone. An actual megaphone she must have ordered just for this. Attention neighbors. We are finally evicting our 28-year-old failure son. I literally couldn't process what was happening. My dad was spray painting loser on my moving boxes while my sister Gabriella, 26, filmed the whole thing on her phone, laughing and adding commentary. This is what happens when you're a disappointment. My brother Sawyer, 30, had put up signs all over the lawn. Free stuff from a freeloading parasite, and people were actually picking through my belongings. Mrs. Canderson from next door was holding my high school yearbook and nodding along like this was completely normal. Mom kept going. He owes us $12,000. Hasn't paid rent in 2 years. That's bullshit, by the way. I've been paying them $600 a month since I moved back after college. Not as much as an apartment would cost, sure, but we had an agreement. They'd said they wanted to help me save up for a down payment. I've got the Venmo receipts to prove it. Dad spotted me sitting in my car and stormed over. He yanked my door open and grabbed my laptop bag from the passenger seat. That laptop had all my work projects on it. Before I could stop him, he smashed it on the driveway. Worthless computer for a worthless person. The screen shattered completely. I finally got out of my car. Mrs. Anderson actually started slow clapping. Thank God that eyesore is finally leaving. What eyesore? My car was always parked properly. I kept my room clean. I did chores around the house. Things got worse. Dad disappeared inside, then came to the second-floor window of my room. He had my TV, the one I bought with my first paycheck out of college. He dropped it from the window. It exploded on the driveway. Everyone actually cheered. I've always been the family disappointment. Sawyer's the successful one with his fancy corporate job in the city. Gabriella is the perfect daughter who married rich. And I'm the one who came back home after struggling to find stable work after graduation. The economy was trash, but they never wanted to hear that. Everything was always your fault or your bad choices. I just stood there for a minute trying to keep it together. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. So I smiled, walked to the lawn, and started loading what wasn't destroyed into my car. Dad kept taunting me the whole time, telling the neighbors how I was a drain on them, how I'd never amount to anything. Mom was listing all my failures. Dropping out of the soccer team in high school, I had a knee injury. Changing majors in college from their choice to mine. Not having a girlfriend I've been dating, just nothing serious. Before I got in my car, I turned to face them all. The whole neighborhood was watching. My family was laughing, and everything I couldn't fit in my car was getting picked over by strangers. Two can play this game, I said calmly. Soon you'll see my revenge. They all burst out laughing. Dad yelled, "What are you going to do, loser? You've got nothing and nobody." I just got in my car and drove away. Found a motel that takes weekly rates. It's not great, but it's somewhere to sleep while I figure things out. Here's the thing. What they don't know is that I've been documenting their crap for years. The constant put-downs. The loans they force me to take out for them. The way they take my rent money, but then tell everyone I live there for free. The times they borrowed from my account without asking. And I know things about Dad's business practices. About Mom's spending habits. About the money they've hidden from the IRS. They pushed me too far this time. They humiliated me in front of everyone. They destroyed my property. They lied about me to all our neighbors. I'm done being the family punching bag. I'm done trying to earn their approval. I'm done playing nice. It's been 24 hours, and I'm still piecing together what's salvageable for my life. But I've already made some calls. I'm staying calm, but inside I'm furious. And I know exactly where to hit them, where it hurts. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. What's up, once loyal fan? First update, and holy crap, thank you for all the messages. My inbox is absolutely destroyed. Thanks for the support. Seriously, it's been a wild week since the lawn eviction. Day 3 at the Motel 6, and I realized I couldn't stay there much longer without blowing through my emergency fund. The place smelled like cigarettes and desperation, and the Wi-Fi kept cutting out every 10 minutes. Not exactly ideal when you're trying to rebuild your digital life from cloud backups on a borrowed laptop. So, I posted on Nextdoor looking for temporary housing. Got a message from this older couple, the Hendersons, who live about 20 minutes from my parents' neighborhood. They had a spare room over their garage they were willing to rent me at a discount if I helped with some property maintenance. Mr. Henderson has a bad hip and can't do the yard work anymore. Perfect timing since I needed to save every penny. Moving in was kind of awkward. I didn't want to tell them the full story, but they kept asking why I had so few belongings. Finally, just said there was a family disagreement and left it at that. Mrs. Henderson gave me this look like she knew there was more to it, but didn't push. The room's small but clean, has its own bathroom and a mini fridge. I've been crashing on their couch a lot, though, since Mrs. Henderson keeps inviting me down for dinner. I think they're lonely. Their kids live out of state and rarely visit. Meanwhile, my phone's been blowing up with texts from extended family. Apparently, my parents have been telling everyone I'm on drugs, and that's why they kicked me out.
Classic.
My cousin Rory texted asking if I needed rehab info. Had to send in the Venmo receipts showing my regular rent payments to prove I wasn't some freeloader.